G'day, g'day. Anders Sörman-Nilsson here with you, tuning in from Sydney, Australia. Great to be with you here from my home, where it seems that all of us are working at the moment. Before we get kick-started, we are broadcasting both on Facebook Live and on Zoom around the world, remotely, virtually. I hope you've settled in with a cup of coffee or green tea, whatever is your crutch this morning, this evening, wherever you're tuning in from. We had attendees register from about 40 odd countries from around the world, every conceivable industry. So as you're tuning in, no matter where in the world you're from, if you wouldn't mind just letting us know where you're tuning in from. We're going to run a poll in just a second, but in the chat, it would be fantastic to know where you're tuning in from. So please tell us in the chat where you are tuning in from, and we'll get a chance to see where we're coming in from. Trudy, great to have you with us from New Zealand. We've got Houston, Texas, Melbourne. Thank you, Robin. We've got Sydney, Australia, Glen Waverley. We've got Silicon Valley. We've got Italy, Milano. We've got Malibu, California. We've got the United States, probably Indianapolis there, Becky. Nice to have you with us. We've got Tampa in Florida, Christchurch, New Zealand. Great to have you with us. And there's plenty more coming. So thank you for engaging with me. These are extraordinary times, and I'm really, really fortunate. I was thinking about this yesterday as I was writing the newsletter that many of you received, and g'day, Jeremy from Byron Bay as well. I was thinking about this very, very point, that if there was any point in history that we should be experiencing this crisis that is so devastating for both lives and livelihoods around the world, it is made a little bit better by the technologies that we have at our disposal. We have Zoom, we have WhatsApp, we have FaceTime, we have email marketing engines, we have social media to still be able to socially connect, even in this tough era where, of course, we can't physically meet in the face-to-face settings that we are so used to from a sales and marketing perspective. And we've just had someone from the heart of the US Midwest in Iowa join us as well. It was only a few months ago that I spent some time in Des Moines at the Iowa Tech Festival. And yeah, great to have you with us, Howard, as well. I want to run the first poll here. This is Anders Sörman-Nilsson. We are live on Facebook and we are live on Zoom, just to get us firing with all of our digits for a moment in time. And I'm going to just check in with you who was here for my last webinar, which we ran a couple of weeks ago. It was a scenario planning webinar on how to really respond proactively to the corona or the COVID crisis that we're living through at the moment. It's totally fine if you weren't able to make that one. We did run it at a time zone time that maybe wasn't convenient for all of you, but just to kind of get a sense of who was here during that one. It was also really run for strategists, CEOs, etc. And I think the audience today, given its focus on sales and marketing, might just be a little bit different. And as you come back with those figures live at the moment, might also be a good chance to go back and revisit it. It is available on demand. So as we send out the video recording for today's webinar, we'll certainly make sure that you have a chance to download the slides from that one. 17% said that you were at the scenario planning webinar on March 24th, 84% no. Great, look forward to spending more time with you in the virtual reality as well. I'm going to end that poll and see if we can run the next one here. My question to you, given all of the changes that have been happening courtesy of lockdowns and quarantines and hashtag stay-at-home efforts around the world, I'm going to ask you, what was your primary marketing and sales channel until February 2020? And curious to see whether it was one of the channels that are listed in front of you here. Please list your primary marketing and sales channel until February 2020, when for many of you, things totally changed. Was it print media? Was it personal meetings? Was it exhibitions, email marketing, social selling, for example, LinkedIn, social media, in store if you have physical shop fronts, for example, or showrooms? Or was it content marketing? Just see whether there's some results coming in on that front. And again, that is in the poll. Some of you might see, some of you are raising your hands and you can't see it. Alrighty, that poll doesn't seem to be working. So oh, there you go. Some of you have raised your hands. You are finding the poll on your screens or in your little remote dashboards, which would be where you're actually finding it. Personal meetings, a number of you are saying. Content marketing, a number of you are saying. Some of you are saying you can't see the poll. So we're going to keep moving forward and end that poll. But it is a good question. What have we changed since then? And I'm glad we can see a number of you saying that you can see the heart. I'm going to share with you a couple of slides here just to know what we're talking about today. Of course, the topic today is Smarketing versus Corona, how to pivot from analog to digital sales and marketing strategies in the most disruptive economy in 100 years. I've written a couple of books on digital transformation and digital transformation of sales, marketing, and branding. You can find out more about those. One's called Seamless, A Hero's Journey of Digital Disruption, Adaptation, and Human Transformation. And the other one, of course, is called Digilogue, How to Win the Digital Minds and the Analog Hearts of Tomorrow's Customers. Now, the slides for today's webinar can be found on the following bit.ly URL, bit.ly/Smarketing slides. And I have been told that apparently a capital S in Smarketing and a capital S in slides makes a difference for you to find those. But you can download all the slides here today and feel free to share them with your colleagues around the world as well. The agenda for today, just very, very quickly, is the following. So in this webinar today, I want to show you how and teach you, give you an insight to learn how to gain the digital trust and connect with your audience in an age of total uncertainty and budget cuts. Secondly, how to inspire and win the analog hearts and digital minds of your prospects, but do it in the virtual world. And I'm going to ask Jenny just to post that URL again in the chat window. Jenny is my colleague who's helping me out and is one of the panelists today. Easy to say if you're Swedish. She'll post that URL for the download of the slides in the chat very, very shortly. Thirdly, how to create slide decks that arm you with an unspoken pitch and win business while you sleep. To design evidence-based story for your product and service which appeals to both the rational and the emotional brain for customer buy-in. To optimize your use of web conferencing tools like Zoom and how to scale your pitch beyond the live presentation. And finally, why and how a presentation is a form of Smarketing, sales and marketing, which can 10x your results and marketing ROI. Hopefully that sounds like a plan because there's no plan B, so this is what we're going to go with. Now, by way of introduction, ladies and gentlemen, the Country Gentleman magazine in the American Midwest was the premier publication for the agricultural economy back in the day. Back in 1931, when most American farms did not have electricity, when a tractor on the farm was very much a novelty, and really human and animal brawn laid the foundations of being able to till your soil and get the most output from your farm. Back in 1931, they ran a competition to imagine what the farmer of the future might look like 100 years into the future. And the image or the advertisement they came up with is the one that you see on your right in this slide. In 2031, they imagined that the American farmer would be sitting in front of a screen like many of you might be right now, and managing their Internet of Things enabled tractors and fleet of tools, maybe even drones, right? To manage their fields via, say, precision farming and heat mapping. Now, this is already a reality, and even pre-COVID, this is something that was happening at farms around the world. Now, many of us are facing that reality of sitting in front of a screen and trying to run our businesses. And what is very, very imperative to know today is that courtesy of COVID, if digital disruption was the dress rehearsal for your business model and your communications digital transformation, certainly COVID is the burning platform to make sure that we pivot, that we scale and exponentialize our communications and create signal in a world of digital noise. What we're seeing since the lockdowns and the shutdowns around the world today is that COVID-19 has pushed up internet usage around 70% in most countries that have gone into lockdown. This is US statistics, but it's very, very similar. Say in Australia, one day ago, the government, the NBN, our national broadband network, published similar data. And streaming has, of course, increased by 12%. Now, these are first figures, and this is back on March 25th from the United States. Now, this tells me that being online and having relevant content to connect with digital minds and the analog hearts that have to stay at home and work is so critical. This is the burning platform to make sure that we digitize our communication efforts, ladies and gentlemen. Now, many of you have heard me speak at conferences as a keynote speaker, as a futurist, as a scenario planner around the world. And I mentioned this yesterday in yesterday's newsletter as well, that it is with a very sad state for me and my family to see that not just lives, but livelihoods being impacted by COVID. My mum, my beautiful mum, is the third generation owner operator of a 104-year-old menswear retailer in Stockholm, Sweden. And despite best efforts, despite a big investment into a 104-year-old third generation family business, last week she filed for voluntary administration. Now, luckily for my mum and my dad, who've spent many, many years and toiled and invested their life savings into this business, there was a silver knight who came in last minute, and mum just managed to sell the business, so that we hope the name of Anders Sörman will live on into the foreseeable future. But it's no longer owned by our family. And certainly for her, yes, digital disruption was the dress rehearsal that said everything is changing in terms of sales and marketing. But COVID-19 came in to prevent people from spending time face-to-face with my mum in the analog world she so loves. Now, about 8 years ago, I wrote a little love letter to my mum called Digilog, How to Win the Digital Minds and the Analog Hearts of Tomorrow's Customers, where I very much argue that, Mum, the future of sales, marketing, and branding is not necessarily about throwing away the analog baby with a digital bathwater, but rather to combine the best of the analog and the digital worlds together to connect with both the hearts and the minds of tomorrow's customers. Now, courtesy of COVID, it is challenging in the physical world, nigh impossible for some of us to actually connect with our customers face to face. And the question is whether we need to double down on digital marketing, great content, thought leadership to ensure that we can connect with our customers. Increasingly digitized minds that, yes, while the heart is still attached, the digital minds are, of course, the things that are connecting into the digital ether today. Now, just to give you the terms of reference here, when I say pivot from the analog world to the digital world, the analog world, of course, was all about the face-to-face. The digital world is all about the interface to interface. One's about old school sales and marketing techniques. One's about new school. One's about the offline. One's about the online. And I believe really that one world was about connecting with our enduringly analog emotional hearts, and the other one was about winning our increasingly digital minds. And of course, yes, at some stage we'll have to start winning both again. But the challenge for all of us is, how do we win those digital information focused minds in the digital world, but also really step out and connect with analog hearts that are now forced into quarantine. We know both of these two worlds have some serious strengths and some serious weaknesses to them. And if we were to do a sort of a quick and dirty SWOT analysis on this for a moment in time, ladies and gentlemen, let's just imagine what some of those weaknesses and some of those strengths might be. So for example, if we're thinking about some of the weaknesses of the analog world, well, we could say that it's fragile, right? You know, an event like COVID can shut down commerce, right? This is something that for some of us might have been, yes, a big black swan event. But of course, if something like that happens, we are prevented from actually spending time in the analog world together. It's also at times, depending on the physical locations you have around the world, there might be a lack of scalability. You might be limited by physical confines, for example, or just, you know, the cost of infrastructure. Will you open? Yes, maybe if you're a franchise like McDonald's all over the world, yes, but that comes with a level of cost. But it's not like the digital world is perfect either, ladies and gentlemen, right? You know, for some of us, it might at times feel a bit spammy. For some of us, it might be feeling a bit digitally dehumanizing. I'm going to do my best here to do all of this live with you as well. Excuse any typos, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the weaknesses of both of these two worlds, however, can be offset with some of the strengths, right? The analog world has, you know, aspects like, you know, the human touch that is so important. You know, there's a reason, you know, up until recently, people still wanted to, you know, shake hands on a deal, right? If you're B2B, for example, or even, you know, the friendly human face, right? The smile, you know, body language, right? This is how we used to build trust, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, this has all changed nowadays, right? We're increasingly having to think about how we can build digital trust into the equation in our sales and marketing efforts. So what are some of the strengths of the digital world? Well, one might be that it's eminently scalable. It is also eminently personalizable, or let's call it tailored. We can tailor our communication depending on where in the customer journey someone is at, for example. We can also create content quite rapidly. And of course, depending on what tools you're using from a sales and marketing perspective, a lot of them are based on subscriptions that can be scaled up and down in terms of cost, so that no matter what tools you're using, whether it's Salesforce or Zoom or HubSpot or Marketo, these tools can be scaled up or scaled down depending on what you need in your business. So of course, this is all important. These types of strengths and weaknesses are important to the way we think about running our sales and marketing efforts. And I'm going to just remove some of those annotations as well. This is the amazing thing with Zoom webinar. We can remove these things in a much faster way than it would take me on a physical blackboard. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I think with all of this in mind, though, the essential questions we need to ask ourselves are not just about which technology is hyped, right? But rather which technologies enable us to actually, at this momentous era in history of mankind and womankind, enable us to be more human and more humane with our fellow citizen. What allows us to trust more, to connect more, minds and hearts, to reduce harm and friction and do less menial work? What emerging innovations facilitate meaningful conversation? And they're the types of technologies that you need to be thinking about as you consider how to scale your business moving forward. This leads me to our first trend here today, which is that, of course, every business model today, ladies and gentlemen, is now getting digitally hacked. And to show you, to broadcast and illustrate how little us as humans like change, let me again take you back to my mother's native city and my native city of Stockholm, Sweden, to the year 1967. In 1967, the Swedish government decided we were going to shift from left lane driving to right lane driving. This is pre-COVID, when governments told you what to do, right? It wasn't just the CDC, but rather the Swedish government came out with a massive change management mantra in this era that you can see was every ambulance chasing lawyer's Disneyland. They came out with a change management mantra which held that just smile, we're all just new at this right lane driving stuff. As you can see, it was complete mayhem, ladies and gentlemen. Now imagine a world that's now increasingly digitized when eventually we actually go back out into the streets. And let me just tune you into this little thought experiment. Imagine for a moment sending your kids, your nieces, your nephews, maybe even your elderly grandmother across this intersection. And we'll probably see that a number of your heartbeats per minute might in fact jump ever so slightly. Now, some of you might be a little bit challenged to hear me, so I'm going to bring up the mic just a little bit to my face and see how we go. Now, the World Economic Forum, in fact, predicts that courtesy of autonomously aware, sensorily tuned in autonomous vehicles over the next 10 years will be able to save 1.1 million human lives courtesy of Internet of Things enabled devices. Having returned from my holidays pre-COVID, luckily unscathed, last year, I can only imagine what a world of autonomous vehicles would look like from a safety perspective in Italy. Now, what is happening here today, ladies and gentlemen, in the world is that potentially the digital world and digital technologies, when we code for humanity, such as through autonomous vehicles, just as one example, what we might actually have is a world where human error and the inhumane consequences of human error, such as, for example, someone consuming a bat, which is a butterfly effect event, which has massive global repercussions. These types of events might in fact, human error, might in fact be reduced courtesy of artificial intelligence and other technologies in the future. We might be able to save more human lives courtesy of these new technologies in the future. Now, you might not be a manufacturer, but what we need to reconsider here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the customer journey today has shifted. Yes, it used to be that we, in the era, for example, of the analog world, when we wanted to purchase a car, we might go through distinct customer journey phases like seeing an ad for a car, finding product information, or even asking for a brochure to be sent to us. We might watch an ad on television. We might have, in the discovery phase, an awareness of which brands we might like. We might browse around either in the analog world or in the digital world, such as through showrooms, to get a feel for those cars as we kick the tires. We then, through the purchase phase of a car, we would do things like use configuration tools, see which types of leather or synthetic materials we might want in the car. We might do test drives as we're getting close to purchase. We might do certain negotiations, either online, over the phone, or in person, right? We might evaluate different brands based upon our experience in the showroom and based on our physical and digital connection with a dealer. Finally, once we've decided what to buy, we might have an order to delivery service. We might get educated on features such as the new Mini that we just bought and how it might actually help us in the event of an emergency or even an accident. We might connect, if we're a Mini owner, with the community of other mini fans around the world. And of course, we want the handover experience and the ownership experience to one that feels very much attuned to and aligned to that brand. We also know today, and this is based on some research and some content that we created together with Facebook and their marketing team, we know that this customer journey has fundamentally reduced and changed and compressed, ladies and gentlemen. You might remember the good old days when if you saw a great handbag or a great man bag on the train, for example, back in the day before social distancing, we might have actually gone up to that person and gone, hey, that's a great man bag, that's a great handbag, where can I buy one? Now, of course, in an era of social distancing or even digital tools, nowadays we kind of just like awkwardly lean over, take a photo of it, and hope that through slice image recognition technology, that gets recognized and immediately based upon your portfolio of goods from Amazon, that gets recognized and uploaded into your cart immediately. This means that sales and marketing fundamentally are becoming a new function known as, yes, Smarketing. You knew it, right? This is a new era where removing friction is critical. And in an era where internet usage is surging, where access to video and streaming services is so critical, we have to make sure that our digital customer journeys are truly attuned to the new needs of today's business to consumer and business to business marketing and sales efforts. Now, based upon research that we did together with Facebook and BCG, Boston Consulting Group, in Australia, yes, I'm tuning in from the future today, friction in the digital customer journey cost Australian businesses $43.4 billion in 2018. So certainly the digital customer journey is not always perfect. It's not the panacea. And certainly we have the burning platform today to make sure that we improve the customer journey so that we can move them from marketing to sales through smart marketing techniques. Again, easy to say if you're Swedish. Take a moment and just think to yourself, when it comes to your own business, and particularly now in this COVID crisis, what analog touch points and what digital touch points provide your customers with the greatest amount of friction, frustrations across the discovery, purchase, and ownership cycles? Now, I know we have industries ranging from pharmaceutical to agriculture to management consulting to rugby associations to real estate, etc., etc. And you're all over the world here today. But even if you can modify this slightly for your product, service, or idea, imagine just for a moment stepping into your customer's shoes. What are the frustrations that they experience? And particularly now, in terms of getting a hold of your product or service. Now, you might say no one's buying at the moment, right? But we can still lead, nurture, lead, score, and make sure that we stay front of mind for our buyers as hopefully they accelerate out of the curve during and towards the end of the flattening of the curve, when people start thinking about the thaw to this economic freeze. So sales and marketing, Smarketing, ladies and gentlemen, what is it? Apologies for a little typo here. Our last designer was or is French, so apologies to all the French men and women out there. Smarketing is the process of integrating the sales and marketing processes of a business. The objective is for the sales and marketing functions to have a common integrated approach, which can lead to annual revenue growth of up to 20%, which of course anybody would take in this COVID environment right now, ladies and gentlemen. Now, apologies for if you think that this is offensive. I live with, and my life partner is Nicole, who is a swimwear designer. So apologies for this, this slide if you're finding it a little bit too naked. But I just want to show you one example from a retail and a design perspective about how important social media is in this day and age. As you can see in the background, there's a bunch of resort wear dresses. We share an office space, my fiance Nicole and myself. And her entire business model has been built on Instagram and digital, which meant that from the moment that she started Ephemera, she was able to be global while being hyper local. For her, the web rooming effect has led to Hollywood costume designers picking up her brand, so much so that one of them found her on Instagram, bought 6 swimsuits for Jennifer Lawrence for the movie Red Sparrow that some of you might have seen. And of course, the impact of this on sales has been significant for Nicole. In today's era, of course, how we consume also means that as we watch a movie, straight away we start Googling, or even through image recognition, seeing what swimsuit is Jennifer Lawrence wearing. And as a result, of course, her internet traffic and her sales went up massively, ladies and gentlemen. Have a think, what content, what designs, what stories can you tell online to make sure that you're connecting with your customers in a new way? Another example of Smarketing is the campaign on Zero Friction Future that we have been co-curating with Facebook, where I got the chance to interview a number of CMOs, CEOs, founders of brands like KFC, NIB Healthcare, Mini, and of course Canva. And in these interviews, we created content on behalf of Facebook so that they could reach their business-to-business clients. And I want to just tune you into a quick overview of that to think about how you can create new content and collaborate on new content together with your partners.
We're really wanting to help enterprises to be more efficient.
Consumers want an urgency on their purchase.
We just wouldn't be as strong without that kind of communication platform.
So putting our sort of futurist cap on, what do you foresee or what do you imagine when you think about zero friction future?
And thank you to Andy Fell. I know you've got to jump off the webinar in just a moment. Thank you so much for being with us here today. If you don't know Andy, he's an ex-banker who now runs a really cool coaching clinic around the world. Thank you for being with us, Andy. We're going to continue. But, you know, this is what brands are doing today, increasingly creating great content, great stories, thought leadership, human interviews. And maybe you could do the same as you think about how to pivot into this COVID world. Because the era of brand voice dominating and creating signal feels very yesteryear, right? It used to be that branding was just about brand voice creating signal that hopefully through unilateral communications, the consumer just accepted. Now, this has shifted in the era of social media, certainly, where it started becoming not a monologue, but a dialogue between the consumer and the brand. And through social media and reviews and ratings, the consumer, the customer increasingly took matters into their own hands and probably took your brand into their own hands as well. In the era of the Internet of Things and smart devices, this changes even further, right? Now we have a trialogue between the brand, the consumer, and the object. And this is critical from a communications perspective as well. Now, I just want to give you an example of how this trialogue works, right? Imagine being a Tesla owner or a co-financier with the bank. Back 2 hurricane seasons ago, during Hurricane Irma in Florida, and you're fleeing in your Tesla away from that hurricane with your most beloved human beings in the car, your most beloved belongings, your photo albums, and you're fleeing down the highway with Hurricane Irma chasing you in your back. Now, again, some of your heartbeats per minute might have become slightly elevated, ladies and gentlemen. Now, many of us get really, really stressed when our iPhone or our Samsung battery starts running low. Now, imagine that experience and your Tesla battery starting to run low. What kind of glances do you think you're getting from the passenger seat, right? Do you just go, I wish I was not an early adopter of new technology, right? This is a frustration as you see the petroleum-based vehicles overtaking you on the highway. Until one moment where Elon Musk comes across your dashboard and goes, fret not, human, We've just safely upgraded via the cloud your battery so you can get safely out of harm's way. Now, this is what's enabled through coding for humanity, by building better products and services, ladies and gentlemen, that can provide us predictive customer experiences. Ask yourself, what can you do to fix your clients' challenges before they even occur? How can you code for humanity in this time and era when we need that humanity more so than ever before? Now, the science fiction author Douglas Adams once said, "I've come up with a set of rules that describe our reactions to new technologies." He said that anything that's in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary. It's just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything that's invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary. You can probably get a career in it. Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. And perhaps when it comes to new Smarketing technologies, this is how some of us feel right now. I'm going to try one more poll and see if it's working. We did have a few of you be able to say, what was your primary marketing and sales channel? I'm going to move to another poll and see how long this will work, or whether this will work better. Poll number 3, where would you like to invest more in your Smarketing from now? I'm going to launch that poll and see if we have a little bit more luck on that particular poll, or if we are still challenged by that. Few of you are voting. Fantastic. I'm seeing those votes coming in. Maybe there was just a little bit of a time lag. Now, 26% of people are saying video content at the moment. Thought leadership, 29%. Social media, 10%. Social selling, for example, on LinkedIn, 13%. 0% are saying print brochures. 0% are saying public relations. 6% are saying podcast. 9% are saying webinars. I hope we'll change your mind about that today. And thank you for the roughly 60, 70% who are now voted on that. Interesting to see that video content and thought leadership is sitting so high. I'm going to end that poll, and I certainly will share those results as well, so you can have a look at what people around the world are thinking about investing more in this COVID era, and hopefully in the post-COVID era. Your customers and your consumers are taking life matters into their own hands, ladies and gentlemen, and they want to team up with brands like yours who help them think long-term, smart, and responsibly. Now, the busiest bank branch in all of Sydney, Australia, and it's probably similar in your city or town, wherever you're dialing in from today. The busiest bank branch used to be in the Central Business District. It used to be the Westpac branch on Castlereagh Street, downtown in Sydney. Some of you might have been there. Nowadays, the busiest geolocation for banking in Australia is the 333 bus that goes from Bondi Beach to the Sydney CBD. Now, if you're thinking we should be putting our bank's ATM into that bus, you've missed the point. People are, of course, all have now a bank branch in their back pocket, right? We are mobilizing, and of course our brands and communications need to be optimized for that mobile future. And as we create credit data and social data via our phones, it enables us all to live in a pre-world that's increasingly predictive, preemptive, reactive, preparatory, even precognitive, ladies and gentlemen, for any fans of the Minority Report. Now, please Google this carefully. Toys for adults, right? Lego is one of our clients, and it's also one of my son Lucian's favorite client brands of mine. Now, Lego realized a number of years ago, while studying the data, that it wasn't just kids who were buying Lego toys, but in fact, sales of toys to adults have increased by almost 2/3 over the past 5 years, and by more than 20% in just the last year. Now, this is 2017 stats. I should just apologize about that. And in the UK, for example, the toys for adults market is now worth £300 million and said to be growing 3 times faster than the children's toy market itself. This enables Lego as an innovator, as a Smarketing company, to do things differently. And it impacts the way they are now running their marketing and their Smarketing techniques to engage with, based on data, their customer. And my belief in all of this is that it's impossible today to claim that we are customer-centric brands unless we're extremely data-centric, ladies and gentlemen. Now, many of you, and probably most of you, are spending more time on Netflix than you might like to admit these days, right? Courtesy of the lockdown. Now, Netflix, little anecdote here, they used to distribute their content physically, DVDs in an envelope sent to people's homes. Now, how much data do you think they got back courtesy of that engagement, where hopefully their pigeon with the envelope actually turned up at the right door or the right inbox? Very little. Then they shifted from an analog distribution and dissemination model to a digital one. They used to distribute other brands' content. All of a sudden, they could eavesdrop on all of us and know exactly how tuned in we were with the content that was being delivered. All of a sudden, they knew, based upon big data, that a large portion of their database used to love pre-controversy an American actor. And I think actually his case has proved that he was innocent now, Kevin Spacey, right? They love David Fincher as a director. And if you overlay over the top of those two concentric circle a successful UK script from 20 years ago, you've got the perfect product that you know that your database is going to love even before you build and design the series. And then through smart A/B split testing of every Pantone color on your left, they injected those Pantone colors into the eventual posters so they could connect with digital minds and analog hearts, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's possible in this new digital era. One of our clients had to cancel their Sydney conference earlier this year. They turned the entire event into a virtual event, and they went from 10,000 physical participants to 80,000 virtual participants in a week, because they were able to switch their business model to the digital world and get more data about the usage patterns of their clients as a result. Ask yourself, are you just claiming to be customer-centric, or are you truly customer-centric courtesy of being data-centric? So what kind of content can we create? Well, one of our clients is American Express, and during the American Express Global Travel Conference in San Diego in 2018, the good old days when we still had physical analog conferences, I shared this piece of information with American Express and their partners. And it is about punching a hole in, or debunking, old myths. Now, many of you would have heard the old adage that if you just book your flight, remember the good old days when we actually used to fly, right, with carbon emission offsets. The old adage that if you just book your travel way in advance, you'll get the best deal, right? We've all heard that, and it's not true. So an online OTA, online travel agency, looked at all the big data of when flights were cheapest. And they found this particular curve in terms of patterns based on big data. And they found that the prime booking window was in fact 120 days to 30 days prior to departure. And then steadily from that point onwards, in fact, things go up. The idea of last minute deals is truly defunct, as you can see by this particular graph, right? We can see that this is not a good time to buy a flight, but that really this area here is when you'd be interested in buying a flight. And if you bought with Amex or Visa or MasterCard your flights here for business purposes, you'd then get 55 days interest-free. Hopefully you'd go and score a deal by that stage. And in fact, you'd have money coming in before you'd even have to pay for the credit card. That would be an ideal world, right? The OTA shared this content on their blog. What do you think that did? Of course, it built a lot of great trust with clients. So even if you weren't in the market to buy a flight on that particular occasion, once you read this blog, you were like, actually, that OTA really created trust for me. so that I'll go back and make the best decision that is the smartest based on my wallet, and I'll come back because they built trust. Many of our clients today are pivoting their communications in this new era, ladies and gentlemen. So for example, we've just shared the example of what we did with Facebook. They understand, and yes, you might say, hey, well, they're a digital native company. They understand digital communications, and certainly, yes, they do. But ask yourself, what else might you be able to do based on data, research, foresight? How do you, in this era where everybody's looking for answers and leadership, how do you stand out and create signal in a world of digital noise? With Visa, we collaborated with them where I was the media spokesperson for Visa. Yes, we use different credit cards, as you can tell. Based on research they were doing in terms of contactless adoption, in other words, NFC payments and mobile payments, and we shared that research that we've done together with YouGov. Now, if you do research and you come up with great findings, those findings are very, very media friendly, ladies and gentlemen. Ask yourself, how can you collaborate with research houses and create great content and data that then you need to turn into story, just like Visa has. And certainly we're happy to share in the follow-up information and show notes with you some of these B2B brand amplification techniques that some of our clients have been using. At the moment, we are working with and just about to publish a retail resilience white paper together with Microsoft in terms of how retailers can use artificial intelligence to truly help them bounce back from the COVID crisis. Again, based on data, based on real interviews and green shoot innovations. Zurich, we've also partnered with to create, through scenario planning, a great 2025 report on what the future of financial advice looks like. And I would encourage many of you to think about how can you turn scenario planning and strategic advice into something that your clients and your partner networks might actually be able to use in their own businesses. Scenario planning is a great way to start writing about 4 different future worlds. Again, make sure you download that webinar when you get a chance to see how you can create new styles of content and through what partnerships you can help create a bit of a halo effect about your collaborations and content as well. Okay, let me move forward, ladies and gentlemen, to give you a few other examples of how we might be able to create new styles of content. Lego, a few years ago, was really on the demise. They were nearly filing for bankruptcy in 2004, but that's when they started their digital transformation. They were able to move from concept creation to concept development to market development and business optimization and a reinvention at a time back in the early 2000s when really the idea of playing with bricks in an era of video games seemed kind of archaic. They had to really identify their unique competitive advantage in terms of bricks being a timeless and also timely way of playing. They assessed the impact of changes in customer behavior, and they helped think about, based on data, they were able to reposition the business to ride the waves of change and figured out how to communicate this in an engaging way to the market. So what are some of the ways they were able to do that? Well, they found that really Digilog, combining the best of digital and analog together, was the way forward. They started creating new content like Lego Masters, a TV show for really mostly for adults or even cross-generational communication and collaboration. They had new partnerships together with the likes of Harry Potter, for example, to give new licensing opportunities. And prior to COVID, of course, investments into Legoland, such as in Legoland in Germany, they were able to diversify their content offerings and brand experiences. Now they've got digital boot camps, hackathons, and they invite their community to co-design new Lego sets. Again, through collaboration, through innovation, how can you do something similar? How can you use customer data and what do customer truly want to move from product push to product pull based on all the digital data that we're going to be having available to all of us? I'm going to shift now, ladies and gentlemen, into a communication strategy. How do you do all of this? And how do we create trust, B2B and B2C, with our prospects and our clients? Maybe even get back on the front foot with our most loyal clients to see that we're adding value in this crisis. How do we create trust? Well, we're moving into a transformation economy at the moment where, yes, we have to connect with digital minds, but we also mustn't forget about our analog hearts, ladies and gentlemen. A quick kudos and respect and a shout out to my friend and also colleague, Rachel Botsman, who's really codified the thinking at the moment around trust. In her book, Who Can You Trust?, Rachel writes about what her definition of trust is, which is a confident relationship with the unknown. And in these moments of uncertainty that we're living through right now, having a confident relationship with the unknown is something we'd all invite into our lives. Certainly I would, right? But how do we create that? How do we move from the known to the unknown? Well, largely, ladies and gentlemen, it is through science fiction storytelling, or storytelling about your products and services that truly connect both on a mind and a heart level. With any technology, with any innovation, with anything you're seeking to roll out right now, and many of you are pivoting on the spot with your business models, whether you're in pharmaceutical or in agriculture, in publishing, in media, in thought leadership, in creating bricks for adults and kids, we're all pivoting right now. And we have to tell the story of where we're heading into post-COVID, because everybody wants to be part of that science fiction narrative. Just like we've accepted things like trusting airplanes, then trusting ride sharing, then trusting autonomous vehicles, and then trusting what's next after that. Somebody had to step up and tell a better story about autonomous vehicles. It was Elon Musk. But now every major brand, of course, is in the electric vehicle and, of course, the at least semi-autonomous automotive space. When it comes to payments, we had to start trusting things like credit cards, digital payments, or even digital currencies like Bitcoin and Ether. And what's next, we don't know yet, right? But we have to tell a science fiction story to get our customers to buy into them. And oftentimes it's the story around your brand, your product, your experience that is most important. Now, many of you have heard about Airbnb, right? It is a platform that's created digital trust to help people move from the known to the unknown, right? Trusting a landlord or a tenant with your house, or trusting that, you know, the house you're about to rent is not rigged with cameras everywhere, right? These are all trust challenges that the platform's built really well. Now, there are others that are trying to compete with Airbnb right now, such as Ripperide, R-I-P-A-R-I-D-E. Now, Ripperide's approach is not just about showing pictures of the perfect home, but they're telling a story about the experiences, the transformations around a place you might go and want to spend some time in. Let me share with you one example of this. And think about how you could tell a story to create trust in your business in a similar manner. So in an age when, yes, certainly video, well, it's not killing the radio star because podcasting is majorly important from a sales and marketing perspective. Communicating differently about what you do and maybe the context and the types of experiences and the types of transformation you might experience or expect from having access to your products or services is a key aspect. Storytelling, ladies and gentlemen, and sometimes science fiction storytelling about a post-COVID world where, again, we can spend time with our fellow humans. Having experiences like this is important. Now, Ripper Ride contacted us. Yes, it is our little cabin that we love very much and we socially distance in, but we also rent it out, of course, not during this COVID era because we're not allowed to. But that little cabin certainly is something that's very close to our heart. But just having Ripper Ride create that piece of content for us through some of their influences has massively scaled the amount of bookings that we were getting pre-COVID, and certainly will post-COVID as well, when the Australian government allows people to get away from their city cabin fever to a cabin which can cure your fever. So these are all ways in which we can now communicate, ladies and gentlemen, because our trust is shifting, right? We used to take it as truths that scientific evidence on the effects of smoking held that more scientists and educators smoke Kent with a micronite filter than any other cigarette. Like, this is what we used to trust from a sales and marketing perspective, right? But we become a little bit more scientific, a little bit more skeptical, right? And the norms are all shifting during COVID. I mean, some of you might remember the good old days when milk came from a cow, right? Now it's almond milk, it's macadamia milk, right? They're all the dairy-free, lactose-free variants. And even meat, and certainly we spoke about this at the Certified Angus Beef conference in Nashville a couple of years ago, even what constitutes meat is not really clear. What is beef when it can be grown in a dish is also up for grabs. All the norms are changing today, which is why it's so important, ladies and gentlemen, that if you produce products, that you do so in an ethical manner, that you can prove from farm to fork or from producer to consumer, that your whole supply chain is ethical. And to partner up with brands, and thank you very much, Becky. Great to have you with us here today as well, all the way, I think, from Indianapolis in the United States. Now, you partner up with brands like these ones, whether it's Certified Angus Beef or Demeter or Biodynamic or Fair Trade, to make sure that you use this as an opportunity to tell better stories, but stories that are also digitally verified, ladies and gentlemen. If you're selling technologies, ask yourself through the entire customer journey, what kind of content have you created? And while Facebook talks about 3 different phases of discovery in the automotive space where we've been collaborating with them, I sometimes break it down into 5. It's unique to your industry, right? But I find 5 stages are quite helpful. Awareness, engagement, evaluation, decision, and usage. Ask yourself, if you were the vendor of HubSpot, which is the technology platform we use, or the marketing technology platform we use, how can you, as a technology company with a license in your old industry, how can you utilize the communication opportunities in front of you? How can you raise awareness through word of mouth and agency referrals, for example? What is marketing technology, or MarTech? Can you create a podcast series on business growth that has a little tagline at the end of, hey, why not consider HubSpot, for example? In the engagement phase, could you have video content on why digital marketing is so important? Could you offer free diagnostics for websites, such as an audit online? Could you run Facebook live events? Maybe even running regional workshops and masterclasses. Yes, now in the virtual world. Could you have someone in a contact center call up and offer business advice for somebody that's struggling with their marketing? How do you use infographics to show the efficiency of, say, blogging and thought leadership content? Could you run a massive global event post-COVID where you gather people again in a sanitized manner, like the inbound conference that HubSpot runs every year? How about case studies on your most successful clients? Now's the time to write those and publish them, ladies and gentlemen. What about running user groups that help support each other on how to get the most out of the technology? Offering phone support, migrating account leads, running web coaching, offering chat support, doing podcast training and webinar training as a matter of onboarding, offering marketplace resources, and really tuning into the accountability sessions and goals that your now converted clients have. How do you do that? And are you offering support just like HubSpot do? And by the way, I'm not selling HubSpot here today, but it is one of my favorite technology vendors. I have no interest in them, other than holding shares in them, of course. Talk to your financial advisor. But I do think they offer a really great case study in terms of how they partner with their clients and how they help in a transformation economy ensure that people get results. If you're thinking about how you want to create stories, you should be looking up the Pixar pitch. Now, many technologists are using this in terms of how they get venture funding for their products and services. And we're going to move to Q&A in a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen. I want to share a couple of more really practical tools that you can think about before we do so, though. The Pixar pitch is the way that Pixar builds its movies, largely based on the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. And the idea is to essentially follow a similar template. Now, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Nemo, they all work based upon this, right? Once upon a time, things were good, right? Every day, Nemo swam around in his beautiful little ocean until one day a massive disruption happened. Because of that, Nemo had to go on an adventure. Because of that adventure, he had to learn some new things where he met a mentor, for example, until finally Nemo was rejoined with his friends and family. Ask yourself how your product or your service might fit in here. Now, one of the most successful times where we had with my family business when I moved back to Stockholm for 3 years to work with my mum and my dad ahead of the business's centenary, we wrote a letter exactly based on this. And the letter went something like, once upon a time, retail was all analog. Men and women served other men and women in a physical showroom. They helped them find the right clothing, and through Fingerspitzengefühl or fingertip feeling, they were able to create the perfect portfolio of clothing. Every day, my mum Birgitta, her father and his father before him went to work with the sole purpose of making Swedish gentlemen look great for the most important moments in their lives. But one day, the internet came crashing down. Digital disruption changed the face-to-face meeting. Because of that, my mum's revenues, her former profits, went south. Because of that, mum had to digitally transform and adapt until finally, up until COVID at least, she started communicating via Instagram, Facebook, and combining the best of both physical handwriting and digital marketing via, in her case, HubSpot, to ensure that she could win the digital minds and the analog hearts of tomorrow's customers. Now, this is just one example. Based upon that communication, she had her best VIP day in history. This was back in 2015. Unfortunately, things have gone south courtesy of COVID since then. But this might be one way you think about how to engage your database and how to pitch your products and services, ladies and gentlemen. Let me move forward. We are living in a transformation economy, and the likes of Nike understand that it's not just about pushing more products anymore. The consumer is too skeptical for that. Nike positions itself, certainly together with me, when I ran my first New York Marathon spontaneously, as a true transformation partner. There's more video content online on that experience. It's not just about selling shoes. They're creating Nike experiences, running clubs, the Nike Hyper Adapt. They have the Nike app, to help you be the best version of yourself. And that is truly the place to be in the transformation economy beyond mere experiences. I want to give you just a tip from the world of technology and how ideas get disseminated. Some of you might have heard about the diffusion of innovations, which is how innovations spread through society. Now, there are essentially 5 different categories of humans. We have the innovators and the early adopters, constituting about 16% of market share. Then we have early majority, late majority, who might be a little bit more skeptical about adopting new ideas and trusting you. And then we have the laggards. Now, you might be able to sell your products and services to the innovators and the early adopters, but some of their CEOs might be early majority or late majority. The question is, how do we sell a new idea? And I think one of the best examples of this as a master smarketer is the late Steve Jobs. If we think about how he sold the iPad 10 years ago on 27th of January when it was launched, he talked about 5 things really, and he did 5 things very, very cleverly post that sales pitch. He firstly talked about the relative advantage. He said, everybody's got a smartphone and a laptop. I've got this third category device, a platypus style device that doesn't evolutionarily fit into any box, which is why it's interesting. And he said, secondly, that it's fully compatible with the iTunes ecosystem you're already using. It's compatible, so it will assimilate easily into your life. Thirdly, by certainly encouraging videos of adults, often user-generated, elderlies, and of course, babies using the iPad, he made the complex seem quite simple. Fourthly, you were able to trial this technology easily in a store, right? Now you have to think about how to do that during COVID and post-COVID, right? But you could play with the technology. It was easy to use. And finally, it was very easy to observe other people who were just like you, even if they were early majority, late majority, or laggards, who were using the technology and how they were, say, on airplanes or in Starbucks cafes, using the technology to their advantage. Now, before we go into the final little bit here in the webinar to share some tips and techniques on communications and how to do slides, I'm going to do a quick run through on that. I do want to run just one quick poll as well to see, when we think about whether you think we're going back to business as usual post-COVID. I've launched that poll now. I'm just curious to see whether you think that after the lockdowns, are we going to see business as usual? Are we going to go back to the same sales and marketing techniques that we used to, or is it going to be a vastly different world in the future? 93% of you are currently saying that you do not think that we'll be going back to business as usual post-COVID, which is, of course, why this moment in history is so important to ensure that we are pivoting our sales and marketing efforts into the digital world. Thank you for sharing. 9% are saying yes, that could be the case. Some of us certainly hope for that world, although others are saying that maybe, hey, there might actually be a better world post all of this crisis. I'm going to end the poll, share the results so you can tune into what your peers were saying. Let me give you a few final tips here, ladies and gentlemen, on how to create great slides. Hopefully some of you have enjoyed our slides, and some of you might have even found it a little bit cinematic at times. At least that was what I like to believe. The way I design my slides is to think about these 4 quadrants. This is known as the Herman brain dominance instrument. It's based on the idea of the left brain and the right brain. The left brain is said to be more process-oriented, more mathematical, more logical, more methodical. The right brain has been said to be focused on emotion, innovation, creativity, the interpersonal, right? Now, we have to, when connecting both with rational minds and the emotional brain, we have to be able to do all of them. Now, this is not just about the left brain and right brain. You can also see that some thinking is more strategic, cognitive, maybe even abstract, and some thinking is really, really practical. So when I think about our communications, and again, please do download the slides, I almost run a checklist to think about whether I'm appealing to the blue quadrant of facts, the green quadrant of form, methods, steps, etc., such as, say, the customer journey. That I think about training and development, communications, culture, such as talking about my mum and story. And then I also talk about the future, say by running little polls in the webinar to see how people are thinking about a post-COVID world. Or we're talking about future trends, vision and purpose, for example. Certainly my purpose, as I shared with you in a slide earlier, I didn't address it specifically, is around spreading and disseminating avant-garde ideas that expand minds and inspire a change of heart. That is my purpose, and I try and live it every day. How do you do these things, right? And when we think about also telling a science fiction story, what do you need to do in each quadrant to make people who might opt for one or a different thinking style, how do you get them to feel better about change? The primary concern for someone in the blue quadrant might be, what's the financial impact? Someone in the green quadrant might say, what's the security impact structure of buying this new product or service that you are touting? Someone in the C quadrant or the red quadrant might say, hey, what's the personal impact of this? You know, how is this going to impact morale? What does it mean from an interaction perspective? Or what's the peer support we're going to get if we invest in this? And finally, what's the yellow quadrant going to think? How is this compatible with the future? How does it feel novel? These people might have a little bit more risk tolerance. So you need to learn how to communicate all of those things in your communications and presentations. And if you revisit today's presentation, I've done the best to make sure that we talk about some facts and figures, that we have a step-by-step process, such as the customer journey, that we give you some models, such as sales and marketing, that we give you some case studies, like HubSpot, for example, or Facebook, or what Microsoft is doing. Hopefully, we've also told you some emotional stories about my mum, for example, right? True, raw, real stories that are case studies that aren't perfect. And hopefully, we've also tuned you in through the use of video and a little bit of cinematography and some conceptual frameworks, such as the SWOT analysis, for example, at the beginning, to think about how this will sit long term. We've used metaphors today. And this becomes a really handy kind of check sheet for all of you. Given that this is a check sheet, it should be applicable and attractive to all of you in the green quadrant. And hopefully there's been a fairly good feel to the webinar as well. Great little checklist to use as you think about how you design your story, your science fiction narrative. And on that note, I'm going to play you a quick video on the future of branding that hopefully will give you a few more answers and maybe just a little bit of inspiration as you think about how to tell your science fiction stories moving forward. We are going to have a Q&A just after this. For those of you who can stay around, please do. Before that, let me play you this quick video.
The old world of B2B branding is extinct. The age of the digitally distributed brand has dawned, and the noise of its birth threatens to drown your signal. With every brand now a media brand, how will you establish a B2B brand signal in this world of digital noise? Successful brands curate narrative odysseys like science fiction authors, suspend our disbelief, transcending us into galaxies of possibility. To ensure your signal is amplified, you must establish plausible future scenarios and narrative arcs that engage your audience. Only once you have built their confidence in the unknown have you earned the right to show how you can transcend your clients' organizations into that impending ecosystem and guarantee their success. Only when their minds are open to the limitless possibilities will they consider you as their transformation partner. B2C brands might turn to influencers for independent endorsements, but even though B2B is increasingly consumerized and human-centric, its client journeys are still distinctly unique from B2C. B2B brand ambassadorship is about future storytelling, inviting prospects on a magic leap into the future, a future where your solutions are a bridge to the possible. Science fiction storytelling allows procurement professionals with rational minds to see you as an essential partner in the emerging transformation economy. But you must first capture their analog hearts, and this begins with science fiction storytelling. Let me, as your futurist, as brand ambassador, craft your transformative narrative and captivate the digital minds and the analog hearts of tomorrow's clients.
Cool, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, it would be unethical of me as a sales and Smarketer not to do a little pitch at the end as well. But maybe also just some case study tips of how you can put together your narrative and through maybe smart animations, etc., connect with your audience and create some signal in the noise. I am open for Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to ask you, maybe as you put your questions, to think about these 5 questions as well. If you do have questions, reflections, or statements for clarification, now would be the time. I know that we are a quarter past the hour, so I fully understand if you do need to go, but I do invite anyone that has questions to please pose those questions or reflections at this moment. While we wait for some of those questions, or feel free to shoot them through in the chat as well. The URL for the slides, Raphael, is going to be shared. It is in the chat actually further up. Jenny has shared it, but I'll ask Jenny to reshare it again. It is bit.ly /Smarketing slides. And I do believe we need a couple of capital S's in all of that. And let's see, does anyone have any questions in the Q&A or in the chat? Chelsea asked, what are your favorite tools to help make your presentation cinematic? So I use a combination of them. So for example, I create my slides in Keynote on my Apple, but then I export them as images, and then I use Prezi to P-R-E-Z-I or P-R-E-Z-I to lay it out as a canvas, which is the presentation software I'll be using today. I also like to use, or at least my designers use, Photoshop and InDesign to help me with some of the slides. Some of them I do myself, some of them they do. I have been partnering with a company in Melbourne on doing some of the video animations, and I've got a good videographer who helps me as well. And then I try and study lots of other presenters as well. Yeah, so hopefully that answers some of your questions. Let's see. What are the downfalls in generating, what are the downfalls to webinars in generating business? I'm in the agriculture sector where the end user is a farmer. Well, I don't think webinars is the be all and end all, but certainly they are a way of transmitting information. Is it as transformational as the face-to-face meeting? Maybe not. But in this era of quarantines and lockdowns, we have to use new technologies. Now, it might be Zoom webinars, it might be FaceTime, you might even have a one-on-one meeting via Zoom with a farmer. Now, we know the average age of a farmer, say in the United States, is usually in their late 50s. Are they using new technologies? Well, today they're being forced to use technologies. Even if they were slow adopters of these technologies, today they are being forced to use them. Mick, thank you very much for posing that question. Randall, real estate industry, is asking, you have spoken to the real estate industry in the past. Any top line things you're seeing right now? Well, in Australia and other places, open house inspections are not allowed, or at least they're not allowed for more than 2 people. So it can be the real estate agent and 1 person. Now, that is not super scalable, but of course, a lot of real estate agents are now doing either virtual showrooming, or they might even do video content. even for live auctions these days. So the real estate industry is pivoting pretty quickly. I also think that there's huge opportunity in social media for real estate agents right now to build trust. And even though maybe transaction volume has slowed down today, to really educate your clients. For example, our mortgage broker contacted us yesterday. Yes, she helps mortgage or broker for mortgages and loans, business loans, etc. But she wrote a fantastic email newsletter, something as simple as an email newsletter, to really build trust. So while people might not be borrowing a whole bunch of money to invest in property right now, just getting her advice on government grants available, what the banks are doing to ease the burden, all of those things are really helpful in terms of just her building trust. So when people are ready and we're ready to reinvest out of the curve, she'll be front of mind. So maybe there are some examples. Let's see, Billy is asking, our business has a big focus on online advertising. You mentioned COVID has pushed internet usage up 70%. However, we have seen a drop of 61% in our website visits in the last week. At what point should we suspend our online spending? So this is an interesting one, Billy. I have heard similar things that maybe advertising hasn't been, I don't do any advertising online. However, Facebook is a client, so I should reconsider that. But it does really work for my fiance's business. For her, the business to consumer space, Facebook credits has been really, really helpful, for example, for her to connect. So I think it depends on your business. I don't know what your business is at the moment. So I am answering this question live at the moment. I think organic content and building thought leadership, really giving generously to your clients is absolutely key at the moment. So if you can invest maybe a little bit more in blogs, in newsletters are a little bit more push, yes, but if the content's amazing, then that's fantastic. Investing more in video or even in driving people to an event like the one you've participated in now, if that can work for your business, I think that would be really, really helpful. So hopefully that gives you some level of confidence that maybe it's not just about online advertising, but rather about really creating unique and interesting content. Linda Marshall is asking, what do you think the future of events and conferences will be in our post-COVID world? I do expect that that the conference industry will still exist in the future. I do have a personal hope for that, but I'm also not counting my chickens before they hatch. I think it's going to take time before people feel confident to stage big events, and a lot of our international clients have rescheduled events I was due to speak at in Denver, in Madrid, in Stockholm, with at least 12 months out into the future, and we'll just see whether those events will take place in 12 months or not. I do think that the future of events and conferences will be a combination of the analog and the digital, and that this is maybe a good thing for conferences. So 2 weeks ago, I spoke at SES Pour Distance. That means the Swedish event and sponsorship conference. They moved their whole conference to being a virtual one. I spoke to them from Sydney, Australia. They ran a great half-day conference for everyone in the conference and events industry on the future of events. And that, to me, gave a little bit of a precursor to what I think the future of events will be, which will be this combination of simulcasting. It will be, yes, running analog events, but capturing all the content, creating great video content, and ensuring the conference is not just an event and a spray on, but rather the content can keep living on into the future. WOBI or WOBI is doing some really great work in this and turning their content that they've captured into really, imaginative content right now that they're distributing to build their brand. Similar for Singularity University. They're running some really great virtual events. So I think thinking about the combination of analog and digital and how you can make sure that if people do invest into an analog physical conference, how do you make sure that before, during, and after, that the content keeps living on and adds value in this transformation economy. I do think that transformation has traditionally been easier in the analog world, but information dissemination has been something that the digital world has been really good at. I think in the future, we're going to see more transformative events online as well. Tenik, we are in Indonesia now, and we're crazy on doing Instagram live show to market the product and service from every field of industry. What's your insight regarding Smarketing? Well, I think Instagram live and Instagram videos are quite powerful, whether it's story or Instagram live. If you already have the privilege of having a great audience, please keep using it, explore it, and keep amplifying your products and services on there, even in just the interest of service. I think there is a tight line at the moment between seeing to be profiteering from what's happening around the world, but I think giving generously is important in this time and era. Raphael, how do we stand out as retailers in current times? Well, I'm seeing innovations from retailers and manufacturers all over the world, people who've changed their manufacturing processes to produce, masks and gowns, including in Indonesia, for example, where brands are shifting what they produce and using their skills for what's needed right now, and giving generously to citizens and the community and the healthcare systems. So I think that's one way to stand out and just build goodwill without an expectation of anything in return, although people will probably remember you. I also see a lot of retailers who are very, very quickly moving content into the digital sphere, including my barber. As you can see, 2 weeks ago, my hair looked better. But now I haven't cut my hair for six weeks or so it's starting to go a little bit, as we say in Australia, boof. But they're very quickly, since the lockdown in Australia, they've migrated all their products to the online. They're using Instagram to connect, and they're finding new ways to get their brand out there as retailers, which of course barbers and hairdressers also are. So they're all ideas. Diana is asking, what do you think post-COVID will look like, and if there will be an extended economic downturn? You might want to also download the scenario planning webinar, Diana, if you haven't seen it already, where we talk about sort of a 3-month economic freeze to thaw, and also what it might look like if it's 6 months and beyond, right? Some people are saying up to 24 months. So worthwhile to consider the future worlds we talked about in that webinar. That might give you a little bit more insight on what I might think on that particular thing. But I do think we need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. We need to prepare that for the fact that this might be a 12-month to beyond freeze, and think about how you can position yourself, your content, and digitize your thought leadership so that you are building trust, and you're also hopefully selling and maybe even offering new services as well. Thinking about subscriptions or premium content, etc. These might all be ways to commit a public service act while also building trust. Cool. Well, we've still got actually half of everyone is still on the webinar, even though we've run over. I am mindful of your times. I really hope you guys got a lot out of today. Feel free to keep those thanks and compliments coming in. I do appreciate them. And we will be disseminating this webinar so that you can share it with colleagues and friends as well. Hopefully you learned something. And as we do, maybe just think about these 5 final questions. How can you get 2x the result with half the effort through technology and human creativity? Which old analog processes don't offer you any immediately actionable data insights and need upgrading immediately? What's the compound effect of your competition adopting the right exponential technology today, why you simply don't by 2025? And what is the analog baby in your business? Maybe it's values and culture that mustn't be thrown away with the digital bathwater, but which can be further amplified and augmented through technology. And finally, what would our competition not want you to do next? Thank you for the best wishes from Jakarta. Jeremy, thank you for your email yesterday as well, saying sorry about my family business. I appreciate it. Great to see you again. Phil, thank you. Phil, Luke, always great to partner with you. Look forward to doing more work with you again in the future. And looking after your clients, as always. Great to have some speakers bureaus on here as well. So with that having been said, I will see you in the future, ladies and gentlemen. Ciao.